I chose for our candle, you can't quite see it here, but let me show you the real candle so that you can see what color it is. Oops, sorry about that. The candle is a pink candle. See it right there in the center of the screen. And I chose pink for that candle, which usually the pink candle on the Advent wreath is for joy, but joy is a brighter color for me.
But you had red last week. Okay.
Yeah, I had red for joy. Pink for me, if you look at your face, you'll see a pink in there. If you'll look around your room, you'll see lots of pinks. Pinks are, and not the bright neon pink, but the subtle pink that's just ever present all over the place. It blends between colors, and I think that that's what love is that thing which is just there in between and surrounding and always present in the midst of everything.
Is there a way you could just let us peek at your tie a little better?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of love in there. Ah, okay.
That's my self-portrait tie.
That's great. Great. Lots
Yes,
of love.
I'm wearing a tie with a reindeer, and his antlers are strung with lots of Christmas balls.
Well, thank you for telling me.
Yeah. So our poem is called Love's Exquisite Freedom. And I just have to tell you, there's so many pieces of this poem that just speak volumes to me. And so as we read through it, just listen to it and then tell me what in here talks to you. We, unaccustomed to courage, exiles from delight, live coiled in shells of loneliness until love leaves its high holy temple and comes into our sight to liberate us into life. Love arrives, and in its train come ecstasies, old memories of pleasure, ancient histories of pain. Yet, if we are bold, love strikes away the chains of fear from our souls. We are weaned from our timidity. In the flesh of love's light, we dare be brave. And suddenly we see that love costs all we are and will ever be. Yet it is only love which sets us free. What speaks to you in that poem?
Well, she invites us in at the beginning, unaccustomed to courage, exiles from delight, living in loneliness.
Yeah.
All those pull us in to, we need this love that comes in its train, ecstasies and pleasures and even histories of pain. It's just amazing how graphic she is.
Absolutely. Because we've all been in that space where we were confronted by, do I step towards this person? Do I step towards this relationship? And we sat in that space where we had to have courage to move that direction.
We dare be brave.
We dare be brave. Because it does take some bravery. Because we've probably all been in that space where choosing love also caused some type of retribution. Not necessarily because of the love, but where the relationship broke up or where it went differently than what we thought. We've had to say, do we step back towards it, right? And it takes bravery and often a lot of strength. And probably not in Juan's case at all, but it takes a lot of patience and forgiveness.
I saw a bumper sticker the other day. This wasn't about love, but you mentioned courage, and I think it was in the beginning of the poem. And this bumper sticker, so I live in Carroll County in Maryland, which was just full of Trump and Pence signs, and still are up. And this guy had a bumper sticker, and he said, "Courage is being a Democrat in Carroll County." And that's the way I have felt here. Like, I'm afraid to even say, because some of the signs on the lawn said guns, God, and country. Guns were there before God. So you kind of never know
Yeah.
who you're speaking to. You got to wait a little while before you
Yeah.
mention anything.
Uh,
But she had such a life, early life, with a lot of pain and disappointing relationships. And but boy, did she have courage. Nothing ever stopped her. She lived in Africa for a while, and
But
wow,
she knows what she speaks of when she's trying to figure out the
she
loneliness,
does.
the love, the courage needed to love. Because she's felt the challenges. The
She
sore
sang in a
throats.
choir toward the end of her life. She sang in a church choir, and I've done that. And there's just singing, and we didn't sing all that great. Small choirs, large choirs were better because people with not good voices would sort of hide in there.
Mm-hmm.
So singing in a choir for me was always being in the middle of a lot of love.
You're exactly right. And maybe that's where we should go, is where is it that you have felt love? Who was it that showed love to you? Maybe in an unexpected way. But where is it that you felt surrounded by?
Well, Jim, wouldn't there be a certain level of love at different places?
There is.
If
And
you're in a
the problem,
gathering,
yeah, the problem is that we often define love by romantic love, which is not a bad love. I don't want to put that down at all, but it is not the love that is called for all the time. In fact, if you're trying to get romantic love all the time, you're going to get in trouble in a lot of different ways, right? There's a lot of different love that's appropriate love, and trying to open ourselves up to it, right?
I suppose that people are kind of in the groove now of having learned how to do and I don't even know how they do it, like the candle lighting and the readings from home, and then the singing and synchronizing the singing so it actually comes across to us, the viewer, as being the voices are together. That effort to do that is an act of love, as that's the way I receive it.
Yeah, yeah. But you think about that same type of thing. You've had that type of stuff your whole life. If you've been in church, there's been people that have done all the different little jobs on a regular basis. In the family you grew up in, there were things that people did that you didn't have to worry about at all because they did them, right?
I was thinking that I felt the most love in the services when I did the most, like ushering and collecting the money and reading.
Uh-huh. Those places where we get involved. You're exactly right.
Participating helped me feel more loved
Mm-hmm.
there if I just sit back and watch.
Yeah. Where else have you felt loved? Go ahead.
Yes, another thing too, love can also be a source of appreciation.
Mm.
That's a source that appreciates somebody. It's in a way of showing that you kind of love that person.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
that could be a show of love, of understanding.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be, I'm in agreement with everything that there is about you. We sometimes try to turn it that way, both in our primary relationship and in others. But the reality is if you're agreeing with every single thing about your partner or with your kids, or with your parents, then you're probably not really living that life, because, two different lives don't fit together perfectly. And you have to figure out how to appreciate even in the midst of not being perfect.
Who's perfect?
It reminded me of my grandmother. We called her Nan. This was my crusty old pioneer grandmother. She was born in 1899 in a cabin up near Greer, Arizona, up in the Eastern Mountains. No running water, no electricity. This was a woman who knew challenge of life. And when I was 13 years old, I went up to Eager to live with her for a time. And 13, you can imagine, I was somewhere in those beginning rebellious years, and I decided I was growing my hair out. And so it was all over the place, right? And Nan was definitely not a long hair on boys type of gal. She, not at all. And so she decided I needed a haircut. She brought me over to Uncle John, sat me down in that chair, and he began cutting. And I sat there, but she saw something in my face and in the struggle of what I was going through as she cut my hair. And she stopped in midway and she said, "John, let's not do it today." And that was not what I would have ever guessed for Nan. Nan was an opinion type of gal. And suddenly for her 13-year-old grandson, she chose to not cut the hair that really needed cutting.
Oh, that was love.
That's when I knew my Granny May loved me.
Wow, that's a beautiful story.
So it's hard to do that though, right? Especially if, like Nan, we have opinions about what's there, right? And what ought to be.
I have love of animals on my heart. I've been corresponding with a single mom out by Picacho Peak who has 5 children and divorced after her husband started suffering from acute depression.
Mm.
And she has 2 Labradors. The yellow Labrador that we're going to go take a look at has given birth to puppies that have been given away. But this mother of 5 is intent on finding another home for her yellow lab. And we've been writing really supportive, sweet letters back and forth. But intuitively, I keep getting messages that this animal needs to stay with the human mama and her 5 kids.
Yeah.
And I get all these intuitive psychic feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And when we write back and forth, I want to support her as a single mom. I want to help support her children and her animals. And I want to help her find a way to not be overwhelmed. We're going to meet her in a park with her yellow lab tomorrow, wearing masks. But I feel like I'm being called to give her support and love and help her find a way to keep her animals, who I think would be unhappy without those 5 children. But there's something guiding and leading. And I think it's to meet this 35-year-old beautiful young woman and find a way to give her some help, support, and love.
You know, and what you're speaking of is trying to figure out the vagaries of love in this particular instance with this particular person, right? And just the way you started with here, she's going through a divorce, a breakup of relationship, which feels like a space of non-love. But if you've ever been in that space of divorce, you know that sometimes the better love is to be apart than to be together. Even though it's hard either way. Sometimes, as you speak here, is the best love to divest yourself from these puppies and the responsibilities and the challenge, or is the best love to remain? There's not a perfect choice, and trying to discern that is one of the challenges. And if we ever say, here's the definitive right answer in all circumstances, chances are we're going to miss love. Right?
It seems like that.
I want to help her in whatever way I can.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And so thank you for being in that space of discernment. Judith?
Sarah, I would volunteer to pay vet bills. Judith's here.
I wonder if she is just too worried the dog's going to get pregnant again, and what resources there are for people who can get their dogs uh, altered or spayed or whatever they're calling the female. I forget now.
Spayed and neuter.
Yeah, because if the children have lost their dad, to lose their dog, dogs are such unconditional love.
Right, right.
Um,
I agree.
you know,
The hard part too, one of the lines that's haunted me in this poem is the line where she says there's ancient histories of pain,
Yes.
right? That's a haunting line because it doesn't go away. You know, who knows, maybe the dog reminds her of. And so letting go is letting go of that too. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? I have ancient histories of pain with my dad who died 25 years ago. But that's love pain, right? And so I don't want to expunge that from my life. And trying to figure out how to allow that to be part of the love message, sometimes even within my own soul, is difficult.
you're bringing up something I'm not exactly grasping. Love pain is sort of a confusion where, I mean, I could just keep it to myself, but my father was troubled, um, and he was a child of an abusive alcoholic. So there was a lot of things going on at the house that
Yeah.
he made, as the only daughter, he made me a favorite, which cost me to this day a friendship with one of my brothers. And so when I think about my father and the difficulties, is that what you're saying a
No,
love pain
um,
is?
well, yes and no. For me, that love pain that I was talking about with my dad is the pain that he's gone, that I don't have him with me, and that type of thing. But what you're bringing
Oh,
up,
yeah, I can
we're not-
relate to that too. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's been gone. My father died when he was 52 and I was 30.
Yeah, but the love pain that you're talking about, which is good love pain, I mean, which is a good way to describe love pain, is the love pain of this person who loved me didn't love me perfectly.
Yes, yeah,
And,
yeah, yeah.
and so I learned both good and bad about love from that person, and that's challenging because we are not given perfect examples of love. No, I shouldn't say that. We're not giving perfect examples in any one person. I told you about my Granny May. My granny, my other grandma, Grandma Mostert, she was this short little wrap you in love every single moment. Always, anytime you go over there, there's fresh baked cookies type of person, right? Between my two grandmas, very different, I got a fuller picture of what love was. And the hard part is that some people are so harsh in that relational area that they give us a hard picture of what love is. Right?
Mm.
A father that's really exacting of you have to do this, 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 and this. That's a harsh love. It's not a non-love, but it you have to figure out how to fit that into the bigger picture, don't you?
My elder years, as I call them, is about learning what love is for each person in my life.
Uh-huh.
And that one person might need one thing and another person needs another thing. And there's not just this blanket rule book, is that as I get to know people and get closer, how they want love expressed or what they need or what feels safe is different from person
Yeah.
to person. So
Yeah.
my rule book does not always work.
Right. Yeah, there are times in the loves of my life I've done, damn it, I am loving you. Don't you see? I'm doing this, right? And you're right that it doesn't, because I define that as love, it doesn't mean that that other person can or should define it that way.
And I think you and I had one of those struggles maybe
Uh-huh.
a year and a half ago, that you were expressing love and support, and and I wasn't feeling it because I wanted or needed something else. Not that I expressed, well, maybe later I wrote and expressed those details, but then I remember you gave up hope for a while, and I brought you stones that said hope on them. And it was just that I was in a far off country. I was somewhere else and needed something else. So, I mean, that's a good parable. I'd like to write
Yeah.
our experiences up as a parable because I learn from them.
Well, and that's the ongoing thing, is trying to figure out what is it that this person can teach me about love. But to do that, you really have to listen. So let me give you a hard example. How many don't understand your Trump loving friends right now?
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah. And maybe even a little bit further, how many don't really even want to? But if I'm truly going to be the whole of what God is calling me to be as a lover, then somehow I have to be able to open myself up to how is it that they're seeing love in this moment? How am I the block to however they're seeing love? Not that I have to understand or agree with it, but if I'm not trying to see what it is that they're searching for, then I'm never going to understand. Right?
Hard work.
It is hard work, isn't it? They talk about love of country, and I do believe they have a love of country. It's just not for me. It's not it's dysfunctional love of country, I believe, and so how do I sit in that space of imperfect love from them and still recognize that it is love that they're trying to follow and use? How do you do it? How have you done it through your life at some point or another with some of the people that have been more challenging to you?
Well, the first thing I feel you have to do, Jim, is acknowledge them.
Yeah,
Acknowledge the fact, hey, you're there and I'm here.
yeah,
It's what you call kind of negotiation. I
uh-huh,
win, you win type situation.
yeah,
And negotiation, you're on one side of the street and you're on the other. Well,
yeah,
hopefully you can meet somewhere in the middle. So people who are Trump lovers, gonna love him forever, I guess. That's their problem. So I acknowledge the fact, yes, they love Trump. In this case, I don't. So I stay on my side of the street.
yeah,
I don't think it'll ever come to a real confrontation, although it has in some cases.
yeah,
However, I do believe the fact that you acknowledge that person, that yes, this is your belief, fine, all in good. Thank you.
yeah. And at least part of what you're saying there, Juan, is sometimes determining the right distance between us is a thing of love. You know, a fence can be a show of non-love. I'm building this wall between us so that I don't have to see you at all. But it can also be that I'm keeping my dog on my side of the fence so you don't have that problem.
Mhm.
Trying to figure out when it's the positive and when it's the negative is sometimes the discerning, the challenge of discernment.
And I want to add a PS to my wise husband is um, the willingness to be in dialogue and to allow for difference of opinion is a test for me with patience and understanding, and not to be about the business of changing someone, just about hearing one another into speech, even if we don't agree.
you know, the hard part about what you just said, because I don't disagree with you, but it means I have to acknowledge that maybe I don't have every bit of truth, every bit of knowledge, every
Yeah,
bit, you know, that's a little hard for me sometimes.
I'm always right, aren't you?
Yeah,
Always
that's
right.
the difficulty. And can the story be, can his story have something that adds to truth, even if it's faulty? But you know, we don't want to let him have truth because his truth is faulty. It's because then it brings into question, can my truth also be faulty?
Mm.
And am I willing to hold on to my truth lighter than what I want to?
Right, right.
But that's part of what love is, isn't it? Because if you've been in a space where you had to live in the same house with someone, it was not just because you got along all the time that you survived that time. It happened because you gave space for the other person to be different than you, and they did as well, right? And you
Yes.
negotiated those things that you couldn't give space for.
Yes.
I think that's part of what she meant by the line that love costs all we are and all we will ever be, right? Because it is being willing to let go of that stuff. But the next line also is one of those haunting lines. Yet it is only love which sets us free. So I'm letting go of things, but it's setting me free, right? It's costing me, but that's where I find true freedom. And so it's very counterintuitive that way, right? But where have you discovered that in some of the loves of your life? How is it that that person has set you free, even as you essentially gave part of yourself to that person?
Next slide.
I have a story, but I wanted to make sure other people could share first.
You,
I have a story.
yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
Okay. Um, I have a friend named Kathy who lives on Martha's Vineyard. We met when we were 25 years old,
So 2 years ago.
a few years ago. And I actually was her home health aide. She also was divorced, had 5 kids. An agency paid me to come in and help her for a year. We have become best friends. We're both 65 now. She was and still is a fundamentalist Christian, especially back when she was young. It was really tough. But we agreed to go to one another's church and have this dialogue. We've grown closer. She really is one of my best friends. And she was the matron of honor. She remarried and had 2 more kids. But I helped her raise those kids, and I'm still in touch with them. And it's a primary reason why we used to fly back east once a year.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been a very challenging love because we often have different views,
Mm-hmm.
but we are amazing at being in dialogue. Sometimes we've taken a break from each other over the years, but our love has sustained us through hardships, through disagreements, through our moodiness. It has sustained us. I don't know, I think we're going on 40 some years. And she really is my best friend, and I'm hers. And it hasn't always been easy, but boy, that love is deeper than any of the disagreements.
One of my best friends in high school had the best name. His name was Jim. We got along really well, in spite of the fact that he was Baptist, I was Mormon, and of course those two religions are really good at knowing that they both can't be right. Right? They're both really good at that. And Jim invited me to a special event at his church, and so I said yes, of course I go. And his pastor looked at me, and I remember said, "Wait, you're Mormon and you came to a Baptist church?" Couldn't believe it. But I didn't come to a Baptist church. I came with my friend Jim. Right? And it was the relationship that was important, not what the thing was.
Right.
And that's what we have to remember as you get with your friend, Sarah. It's friendship, not always the other things that might have caused or not caused the relationship to happen. It's that we are already in this relationship. We're already choosing each other.
And she was at my seminary graduation, and she was the best woman at my wedding to Juan, and I was her best woman at her wedding 20 some years ago. And even though her latest husband once kicked me out of the house because I was studying yoga, and for him as a Christian, fundamentalist Christian, studying yoga was a real threat. For me, it was about stretching my muscles.
Yeah.
But so we went through things like that. And I have said to her, "Why didn't you stop him?" And she said, "Oh, I was a young married lady. I was looking up to him then. I'm not anymore, Sarah. Matter of fact, I'm studying martial arts and I'm doing yoga." And I was like, oh, full circle.
See, but what you're saying is very often it's the narratives we tell each other. And so if Jim had told and I had told that Baptists and Mormons can't be in communication with each other, if we told that narrative, which has often been the narrative that's been told, then we would not. I would not have gone to see his church. He would not have come to see mine. But that's not the narrative that we chose to tell. There's a different narrative that's there.
Love. Interesting stuff through all the ups and downs.
Yeah.
Differences, disagreements, love.
And it is one that will always challenge us, because that other person, we can find lots of reasons not to love each other, can't we? We can become lots of reasons to not love each other.
Yes.
Well, maybe not Juan, but the rest of us.
You know, the old expression is, I don't have to love you, but I do like you.
Oh, I thought it was the other way around.
Yeah, I like it the other way around too, Sarah.
I don't have to like you or like what you're doing, but I love you.
Well, and the hard part about love is that too often we define love in that falling in love, that wonderful tumble down the infatuation hill together, which is just an amazingly fun time and exciting, but does not sustain you long term, does it?
No.
Were we ever infatuated with each other? He shrugged his shoulders.
But the challenge is trying to figure out truly how to choose each other after you're not in that falling down the hill infatuation phase. And with friendships, rarely is there that infatuation space. And so you have to, so it's a better model in some ways of what love is, because for whatever reason, we look and we choose each other for any number of different reasons why we come together. Why do we choose each other? And probably just as importantly, why do we not choose some people?
I think that just boils down to personalities.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Although I've seen some pretty amazingly different personalities in relationship, both love relationships and friendships, that had a lot of reasons why they could have not chosen each other. But something brought them together, right?
Tell us a love story, Jim, about you and Joni. Once upon a time.
Once upon a time. You know, Joni and I started out as friends. We were at the same church together. We played on a volleyball team together, and we both remember that time when we looked at each other and said, "Is this a date?" Because we'd done things like that as friends, and were we switching from one thing to the next, or were we taking a step into a new relationship, a different kind of relationship? So every relationship travels its own course. That doesn't mean it's a predetermined course. Each of us gets to decide in each moment what to do.
Have you and Joni ever had differences or disagreements or seen things from different viewpoints?
Yeah, some of you have heard my story about where Joni, wise woman that she was, we were in the middle of a fight, and she stopped me in the middle of it, and she said, "You know what? I think your ex-wife is fighting with my ex-husband right now."
That's a good one. Yes.
And
I
so,
remember when you said that in church one Sunday.
yeah.
Me too.
And so trying to figure out what is the dynamic that's actually in play right then, especially with the person that we are choosing. You know, we have chosen. Why is it that in this moment I don't want to? What's the barrier that's there? That's the real challenge. And that's a really important challenge for me with some of the people that are on the other side of the political space right now. One person in particular, his name is Mark. Mark and his brother Brian were very, very instrumental as I was finding my way into ministry, right? They were some of the leading presences in my life at that point. And so the love that I feel for them and that I want to feel for them is trying really hard to figure out what to do when he politically is revolting to me and is rejecting me in that relationship. How do I hold on to the love that he is, that I have for him, instead of this present whatever?
You know, I have a friend of 30 years, and she actually texted me when the country closed down, not knowing that I was back in Maryland and living about 10 minutes from her. We just, there've been so much going on. I just hadn't gotten in touch with her or thought about texting her, but so I knew her. We did some things together, shared a lot of things. We used to exchange. She was a very good hairstylist, and I would do massage for her. She'd do my hair. I never would have spent that kind of money on my hair, but she did it in exchange for massage, and it was pretty, and it was highlights and all that. So we had never talked about politics all those years. And in the 12 years I was out of Maryland, I think we got together once when I was back, but otherwise it was Christmas and birthday cards with a note. Anyway, come on this text back in March, and then I called her, said, "Guess what? You'll never believe it. I'm 10 minutes away from you." It came up that she was a Trump supporter, and I just didn't go anywhere with that. And we have talked a couple times since. So I have it in my heart that I can, because of a good history and sharing some heartfelt things over the years, I can still be friends with her, but I don't think I can really have someone be close that I would open and share my heart with now, because I just see so much, my judgment, it's got to be deep hate in people who are supporting and continuing to support him. Like Jeff Flake, he is a hero to me. Courage. He came out and spoke, and Romney, and I'm not a Republican, but I have a lot of respect for them. But I think the average person I might meet, they would have to pass a lot of tests before they would be in my inner circle. Like that movie with Robert De Niro, The Circle of Trust.
Yeah.
Funny movie with Ben Stiller.
Uh-huh.
I can't remember what it was.
No, I know.
And
I know what
I'm
you-
not proud of that. I'm not proud of that. But I think there is underneath what Trump is doing is grabbing something that's a very early hate, perhaps, a very early mistrust. And I guess I just don't want to expend that energy. I'll wait until somebody who has got a bumper sticker that says it takes courage to be a Democrat in Carroll County to be in my growing circle of trust.
But see, what you're talking about is the very real thing. You know, if
And I would help them if they were lying on the ground, slipped, fell, whatever. I would help them get up.
Yeah.
But, I'm not going to, I would break bread with them in a large group, but I'm not going to invite them, encourage them, come to my house and have some soup one-on-one.
yeah. But what you're talking about is the very real challenge of looking at the reality of the people around us and how do we choose love with them. There are things that are odious, which make it so that we can't quite do it. I think one of the challenges is always trying to figure out what's the distance, the appropriate distance, right? For some people, it is right here in your arms. Other people, arm's length is close enough. Doesn't mean you're not loving them, but you're not going to hold them here. You can love them in a different thing. The hard part is you can use that further and further away as a reason of love or a reason of hate, right? I'm pushing you away, or am I allowing you to come this close? Does that make sense? Partially, it's about direction.
Yeah, I don't hate those people. I have a sympathy,
Yeah.
the word empathy for what kind of turmoil there
They
must be in deep.
Yeah.
But and my brother, he was a Democrat. When he switched over, I don't know. I don't know, but I was getting glimmers of that over the last 4 years.
Yeah.
And
it's good for us all to remember. One thing that's been bothering my sons, one of the reasons why I fell in love with their mother, because she was so different than the typical Mormon. She was wonderfully better informed. And it really bothers my sons that she voted for Trump, because that's so the opposite of their definition, the definition that was part of the reason why I fell in love with her. People do go in directions that we don't understand. The good news is I don't have to live with that woman in my house right now. I don't have to have that type of love. I have to have the love that allows her to be the very best mother for my two sons.
yes,
I
yeah.
continue to have that relationship be as wonderful as those two relationships be as wonderful as possible. I don't have to fix that part of her. They might have to, Jim and Eric, my sons, might have to, but I don't have to. And so I can allow that distance.
And I'll
Just-
say this for my brother, he gave me his old snow shovel, the one that's good for your back. And yes, it was mended, and uh, a big strong guy would be picking up much heavier loads of snow than I was, but it sure did come in handy. So yeah, there's a sign of love.
It is a sign of love. And every person has reasons why they can and should be loved. Also reasons why they can and should be rejected. And we have to decide, how do we hold on to the reasons to love more than the reasons to reject? Right?
I really appreciate Melanie's bringing that up, because I was sitting over here feeling guilty, because one of my parts of love is being willing to spend time with somebody. So then the evolution of, well, there's a distance, like loving the Trump people. I don't want to spend time with them. I don't want to hang out with them, but I can love them from a distance. So I'm really grateful for the whole conversation that just happened, because I was sitting over here feeling really guilty for the
Yeah.
way I am.
And you should. No, I'm just kidding.
And you feel better now, Judith.
I do.
Yeah. It's never wrong to draw appropriate boundaries. Appropriate boundaries are good. The problem is when we firm them into a space where they no longer, where we no longer question them. Boundaries we should always question and wonder if they're still appropriate. Right? And so we should say it, like earlier someone said, I can't remember, maybe it was you, Melanie, who said, if they're in trouble, I would go and help them. Right?
Yes.
That's where we need to go past our boundary. If that's an unhealthy person for me, to go and be present for them. When else is it appropriate to move towards somebody instead of running away from them? And that's because some of those people, it would be so much easier if I could just stay away from them. But the call of love, not just love your neighbors, but love your enemies, says that there's a time to move towards them.
I had an experience. I have a bunch of people that I pray for as my enemies, and Michael Gerson used to be on that list. But now that I've been reading him and his attitude towards Trump, he's not on my enemy list anymore.
Yeah. And being able to hold them in flux as well as ourself in flux is not a bad thing. Right? As soon as we harden each other into stone, it becomes much harder to love.
Right.
That's why her other poem, I don't know if you read her other poem, it's called In and Out of Time. I think it helps, because what it talks about is it kind of sets our particular love in the grander scheme of things, and kind of essentially says that we are the greater manifestation of all of this love, in and out of time, in and out of time. So let me read it to you so you can kind of hear. The sun is gone, the mist has gone. No, the sun has come, the mist has gone. We see in the distance our long way home. I was always yours to have. You were always mine. We have loved each other in and out of time. When the first stone looked up at the blazing sun and the first tree struggled up from the forest floor, I had always loved you more. You freed your braids, gave your hair to the breeze. It hummed like a hive of honeybees. I reached in the mass for the sweet honeycomb there. God, how I loved your hair. Do you see how it's saying it's not necessarily just me? It's that this love which I draw from is something greater than just me. When I love you, I am loving more than just you and receiving more love than just from you. And I think that helps me to try to figure out, like with Mark, my Republican friend, how to continue to love him, because it's not just this moment that the love is based on.
Oh, yeah.
Often I need help from God
Yeah.
in my prayer and meditation
Yeah.
time.
So let me give you a phrase that is not used very often at St. Francis, and there's a good reason for it. But I think it's an important reason. It's an important phrase. Jesus is sometimes called the Lamb who takes away the sins of the world.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and to me, the importance of something like that is that it's in my relationship with Mark, it's that he's an asshole right now who's doing this stuff, right? And the Lamb takes away that sin, that barrier, which makes it hard for me to love him. If I allow that to happen, not that he doesn't keep saying whatever he says, but that somehow in this imagery, I can allow that to not be as true as what it feels. That I try and that I also try to have that Lamb take away whatever of me is standing in his way. That's the same type of thing that is meant by the African idea of Ubuntu. Do you know Ubuntu? It's essentially that we are part of each other. And if you are doing something wrong, it's not just yours, it's mine as well. And so we have to sit together to be able to heal that space. It's bringing us into that larger community, that timeless, in and out of time love, which we are a part of. And it's hard to see each other that way, isn't it? Because your current failure speaks loud, as does mine.
You know, this poem, I had the blessing of working in the African American community. And I remember working in pediatrics and witnessing a child die and the mother collapsing on the ground, writhing in the grief and screaming. You could hear the screams all over the hallways.
Mm.
And the intensity of this poem, a lot of white people would have trouble if a friend came up and said, I wrote this poem for you.
Yeah.
Because we just don't know what to do with this degree of intensity.
Yeah.
And and the thought just came to my mind that the divide of the politics, it's white people who are supporting Trump. I just think there's the whole Northern European way of raising children hopefully will go away. It's a rough child raising. And it's such a beautiful, intense poem. Anyway, I just had that thought that even if I had a friend come and give me a poem like that, unless they were my lover, I would sort of back away a little bit, unless I knew they were someone who was intense.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful poem.
Sure, but what you're talking about is all the different ways. Sometimes I think what Mark takes from my conversation to him is an intensity of I'm trying to fix you, where it's really me being in a space, I'm trying to at least be in a space of love with him. But he doesn't take it as love. And I don't take some of what he says as love either. And I think I'm right. He might be wrong, but I think I'm right.
Well, the Course in Miracles, and I, the whole thing of Christ. I mean, Christ loved Jesus, not Christ. Jesus loved the beggar and street people, and Course in Miracles teaches God loves everyone equally. And I have used that sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm not God, I'm human. I'm
Right.
a spiritual being having a human experience, and I might love you because you're another human, but you're a hardline Trump supporter and you're on the fringe of Nazism.
Yeah.
I don't have to like you, but I love you.
Yeah. But I love that that call is always out there for me as a driver in my spiritual life, that in this moment, I'm supposed to try to figure out how to love. Even when this person isn't worthy or worth it, or any of the reasons why I would, my spiritual call says to try. Judith, you were going to say something.
Yeah, this journal that I've been taking notes in says, unlovable people need more love than lovable people do.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
very,
yeah.
yeah. Well, the good news is I think we almost solved love. Almost figured it out completely. But we don't have to solve it. We just have to keep struggling to keep making love better and better in our lives, in our hearts, right? You have to struggle with whoever the non-lover is in you and around you, and I have to as well. And if all of us are doing that, and we're helping those around us to do that, we'll get closer and closer to who we should be, who we can be.
I think it's an act of self-love that we came to these weeks of studying Maya Angelou
Absolutely.
and having discussion. So, and showed up for other people. I appreciate everybody showing up here for me. Yeah,
It was nice to get to know you, Melanie.
thank you.
Nice to hear Judith's voice.
Yeah.
As we close, I just want to share that I had the opportunity to pray with Maya Angelou a few times in
Nice.
Boston
Oh,
and hold her hand at various workshops. And yesterday, Clarence Boykins, someone I work with on a racism team, told me that he got to hold her hand and pray with her when she was here in Tucson once upon a time.
huh.
So
Oh,
that made a great impact on my life,
Nice.
listening to her in person.
Telling us.
Very nice. Well,
what a blessing.
thank you for our time together. I've appreciated sitting with you and struggling through what are wonderful goals that we don't achieve all the time.
Thank you, Jim, for all you
Thank
do.
you. Thank you.
You,
Take
Jim.
care, my friends.
Yep. Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Same to
Same to
you.
you. Happy holidays.
Bye.